Welcome to the Podkey summary of Modernize Your AppKit app from WWDC 2026. A lot of the AppKit guidance coming into focus right now is really about letting the framework do more of the work. The big theme is moving away from hand-rolled mouse tracking and one-off event code and toward gesture recognizers, control events, delegate callbacks, and state restoration that all play nicely with SwiftUI and UIKit-style patterns. And then there are a couple of smaller but very Apple details. Keyboard navigation that updates itself, menu bar interfaces that need proper focus handling, and some visual polish around liquid glass and rounded corners. One of the clearest shifts is that modern AppKit apps are supposed to treat gesture recognizers as the primary event model, not old-school mouse, down overrides, and tracking loops. That matters because recognizers give you one shared language for interaction across AppKit, SwiftUI, and UIKit through Mac Catalyst. So if you're building from more than one Apple UI stack, or even just trying to future-proof your code a bit, recognizers are the path of least friction. And this isn't a trade-off where you get convenience but lose control. You can still use view-based APIs, control events, or even write your own custom gesture recognizer subclass when you need something specialized, while keeping the benefits of the system handling the event flow. That same mindset shows up in a bunch of specific AppKit patterns that used to invite manual mouse handling. For a selection, instead of overriding mouse, down on something like an NS collection view item or a table row, the better move is to observe the selected property or use delegate callbacks, such as the NS table view delegate hooks. It's more reliable, and it stays aligned with how the system already understands selection. Context menus are another one. Rather than catching the click yourself and deciding when a menu should appear, AppKit wants that to come through ensView.defaultMenu, ensResponder.menu, or ensView.menu for event. Same story with drag and drop. You don't need to build that from scratch through raw event handling, when delegate methods like table view pasteboard, writer for row already exist for exactly this. A lot of this is just replacing custom plumbing with APIs that know how to behave like a Mac app. There's also a useful AppKit feature that has been around for a while but still feels easy to overlook: NS control events. Since macOS 10.11, controls like buttons and sliders can fire target action callbacks for tracking state changes without you having to subclass them. If you've spent time in UIKit, this will feel very familiar. You can register actions for things like .value change directly on an NS control instance, which makes interaction code simpler and a lot less fussy. It's one of those cases where AppKit quietly got more modern, and the old habits just stuck around longer than they needed to. Keyboard navigation gets a nice quality of life upgrade too. If you enable .auto-recalculates key view loop on a window, AppKit will automatically keep the Tab and Shift-Tab focus order up to date whenever views get added or removed. That means less manual maintenance of the key view chain, and fewer weird moments where focus seems to disappear into another dimension. Menu bar apps have their own version of this story. A status item can participate in keyboard navigation if you attach a target and action to the NS status item button, and if that status item opens a custom window, focus behavior depends on expanded interface sessions being handled correctly. This part is a little niche, but if you build menu bar utilities, it's important. When a status item launches a custom window, the app needs to implement the expanded interface session delegate methods, including when the session begins and when it ends. So AppKit understands that this interface is active. That lets the system manage keyboard focus the way users expect, instead of treating the whole thing like a UI pop-up from nowhere. And when the user picks an action or focus move somewhere else, calling cancel on the expanded interface session cleanly ends it. If you're using SwiftUI menu bar extras, a lot of this is handled for you, which is always nice when the framework quietly saves you from edge cases. State restoration in AppKit has a pretty structured workflow, and the important thing is that you have to opt in deliberately. You encode UI state and encode restorable state and decode it in restore state. For Windows, they also need is restorable set to true, plus an identifier and a restoration class, so AppKit can recreate them on launch. Then, once a window comes back, its controller's restore state method can decode saved identifiers, like which product was selected, and pass that information down to child view controllers. And anytime the UI changes in a way that affects what should be restored later, you call invalidate restorable state, so the saved version stays current. It's a little procedural, but the logic is straightforward once you see the flow. Opt in, save the right identifiers, recreate the window, then rebuild the meaningful state inside it. On the visual side, there are a couple of small design APIs that are very Apple in the best and sometimes most specific way. For liquid glass materials in macOS 27, there's a subtle bounce effect you can add to glass controls, like the feedback used in maps. The guidance is basically to use it sparingly on interactive buttons or containers where the motion helps confirm input, and not everywhere just because it looks neat for 5 minutes. Then there's concentric corner configuration for rounded views. Developers can provide a minimum radius and use factory methods like Dwight uniform corners, so all 4 corners stay visually consistent. That helps custom UI blend in with the system rounded rectangle look, instead of feeling just a little bit off, which is often the exact amount of off that people notice. So the through line here is pretty simple. Lean on the newer AppKit APIs, and a lot of interaction, focus, and restoration behavior gets cleaner and more consistent for free. Less custom event wrangling, more letting the framework be the framework. Usually a good trade. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.